only 99 days until the Cowboys face off the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football on September 9th. But before we get to that, we have some news to go through. As first off, Joe Namath, who played for the New York Jets, won Super Bowl III for the New York Jets, and played one season with the LA Rams, has turned 78. So obviously, congratulations to Joe Namath. And I was thinking about it today. It's been 53 years since the Jets won a Super Bowl. Because suggesting the Jets won their Super Bowl in 1967 to 68 season, that's been 53 years, or going to be 53 years. So that's an incredible feat and something that the Jets should be happy about. That, hey, we haven't won a Super Bowl since this guy was there, and he's now 78 years old. So it's just one of those things that you just gotta smile and say, well, that's the Jets for you. This is what happens. The Seahawks are in discussions with the Atlanta Falcons on a trade for Julio Jones, but the LA Rams are out of those discussions. And I figured that was right, because how are the Rams going to trade for Julio Jones? How is that going to work? They would have to trade almost Aaron Donald for him, because it just wouldn't make any sense. How are they going to even participate in that trade? Former linebacker for the Denver Broncos, Brandon Marshall, was working out with the 49ers over the last week, and he hasn't played a game since 2018. Now, this comes because of all the players changing position, Tim Tebow becoming a tight end, Kelvin Benjamin becoming a tight end from receiver, Brandon Jacobs pretending that he would, to what we thought was pretending, actually him being serious and coming back as a defensive end. So at least he would play the same position, but you haven't played in 3 years. That's a long time. That's a long layoff. So we'll just have to wait and see. The Bills are favorites to land Zach Ertz. Now I understand why they are favorites. You have the draft capital. The team's already built, essentially. But if you're the Eagles, what are you asking for from the Bills? Because the Bills have a good offensive line. They have a good quarterback, a capable quarterback in Josh Allen, who's coming off his best year of his career. They have good receivers led by Stephon Diggs. They have a good defense. It's just more of, what would you ask in return? Because due to the way that the Bills are favorites is because they restructured Stephon Diggs' contract. What do the Eagles want in that trade? Because if you're asking for a first, no one's going to give you anything. If you're the Eagles, if you can get a third, I take it. I take it, because that's probably as high as you're really going to get. Zach Ertz played terrible this past year. He got hurt, but he didn't play well. And, as I was trying to compare him to Julio Jones earlier, I was like, but we can't. Julio, in 9 games, still had a better season than half the receivers in the NFL. So, you can't really compare him to Zach Ertz. Plus, he's a receiver. It doesn't work that way. But Zach Ertz, he didn't have a good year. And he hasn't had a few good years because of the contract situation he's been in. And we heard reports of Zach Ertz on the final game that he played in Philadelphia this past year. He stayed in uniform, in pads, until 2 o'clock in the morning. When everyone else left, he was still there at 2 o'clock in the morning, crying because he felt that was his last game in Philadelphia as an Eagle. So, and even if you don't trade him, you're going to have to either cut him, or because he's not going to play there. He won't. So it's going to be very interesting to see who is willing to pull that trigger to go get Zach Ertz. But if I'm the Eagles, take what you can get at this point. The Texans signed ex-pass running back Rex Burkhead And if you're the Texans, you have, if you're the McNair family, I hope you gave David Culley at least 2 years to see this out. Because he has to rebuild the roster. Give him 2-3 years to build this out as much as he possibly can. And if you don't, fire him and hope the next guy you bring in can build on that foundation that Culley has built on for those 3 years. Because this team is so bad, they get rid of J.J. Watt. When they traded Jadeveon Clowney a few years ago for nothing. They traded DeAndre Hopkins for nothing. You have bad contracts in terms of Larry Tunsil and Brandon Cooks, because when you traded for Larry Tunsil, you basically traded the whole world for him, and he just said, okay, now make me the highest paid tackle in history. And then you traded for Brandon Cooks' contract, which made no sense at all. You had cap issues, and yet you traded for a guy who has a big contract for no reason. I don't know why. Your defense isn't very good. Your offense isn't very good, besides Deshaun Watson, who's been in legal trouble. And you don't know if he's going to even come back. So you have issues upon issues upon issues. So just let Culley have 3 years to just build up this roster and hope the next regime comes in and does the same thing. Because you have to at this point. It's getting ridiculous. I'll be surprised even if they win 2 games this year. It's just the way it's been this past year. It was just awful. Bill Cowher, who was formerly the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach for many years, was talking about Spygate and was saying that Spygate wasn't the reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers lost to the New England Patriots. And he said, and another quote he said was, "It's only cheating if you get caught." That's a phrase that's also another old phrase as, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. This is the same thing. And I know Bill Cowher is friends with Bill Belichick, because every time anytime CBS does an interview with Belichick, they have Bill Cowher go do it, because if they have anyone else go, he's not going to say a word. But if Bill Cowher goes, he'll talk, and he'll talk, and he'll talk. That's just the way it goes. If you're the Pats, I hope eventually, maybe 10 years, 15 years down the road, they either do a documentary or a movie on Spygate. Just for how explicit they were in terms of how they did it. Because the rules are, you can have scouts in the nosebleed section farthest from the field, but you can have scouts there. What the Patriots were doing was they had cameras on the field, their own cameras, and they had cameras in the boxes, and they would watch monitors of not the game, but of the other, from the opposing team's sidelines, and just tape record it so they could see all the signs and say, this sign does this play. So if he does that, boom, this is what's coming. And that's how they did it. So it was very awkward. But they should do a movie, just how explicit the Patriots did it. And who broke that open was a former Patriots employee by the name of Eric Mangini, who was the coach for the New York Jets. But yes, they should do a movie about that. Former left tackle of the Washington football team, Morgan Moses, is to visit the Chicago Bears after last week he visited the Jets. And it shows he still wants to play football, and he's going to go wherever he can get an opportunity. Blake Jarwin, the end for the Cowboys, was talking about his injury, and he said he'll be ready for camp. And Dalton Schultz and him have obviously had a great bond since Schultz has been drafted, but he said that how they push each other. So they're always competing, but how Dalton Schultz said that they are a two-headed monster at tight end. I don't fully agree with that, but I think it's a good attitude to have. And so it just shows that if these two guys are that good separately as they are together, it will work perfectly. the Jets signed former 49ers pass rusher Ronald Blair, reuniting him with his former defensive coordinator Robert Saleh, who was with the 49ers, now the new head coach in New York. The NFL is already eyeing a future 18-game season, regular season. That will be interesting. Like, the players didn't like it, how it was going to happen this year. So I don't really know how this will work, but we'll just have to take it slow and hopefully we see what happens. Former GM of the Packers has said that Adam Vinatieri was nearly signed with the Green Bay Packers before signing with the Indianapolis Colts in 2006. And how he explained it was the Packers offered him more money than the Colts did, which I don't know if that's true or not, but he chose the Colts because they had a dome and that he could play a longer career. Because you have to understand, in 2006, Adam Vinatieri had 3 Super Bowls. He won 3 Super Bowls. Okay? He's been in big games. He's been in clutch moments. He's kicked in a cold ball. He never kicked in a dome and played in a dome at all of his own games. So, it's cold in Boston in the winter. Could you imagine what that is in Green Bay? He wanted to go and say, well, I want to go, if I played in Green Bay, I'd probably have a 5-year career long, about 5 more years, and I got to retire. But if I play in Indianapolis, I could have a 14-year career added on to this. So it makes sense. I think he chose the right decision. He won a Super Bowl. He's now the all-time leader in points by a kicker. So it all works out. Free agent tight end Delaney Walker to visit with the 49ers hopes for a reunion. That is right. When Delaney Walker got drafted, he played for the 49ers before leaving to go to Tennessee. Played all those great years over in Tennessee. Now he wants to go back to the 49ers. He hasn't played in a year. But what I can tell you is that he's in good shape. He's still got those good hands, and he's still reliable. So if you're the 49ers, hey, give him a shot. Maybe you put him as the second tight end behind George Kittle. If George Kittle gets hurt, you have a veteran guy. It all works out very well, and he will be cheap. It's a great idea. Bruce Arians may err on the side of caution with Tom Brady for camp. The idea is Tom Brady had this knee injury, to the point that what we thought was, like, oh, maybe he hurt it during the season because he's 40 years old, this and that. And Bruce Arians said it was just a minor injury, nothing was going to be big. Tom Brady's like, no, it's a major injury, I'll be out. I'll be in rehab for a few months. So people thought, did he tear his ACL? Like, what happened? This and that and this and that. And no, he said, I haven't had surgery. I haven't had surgery in 12 years. And so I thought back, 12 years ago, that was when he had his ACL surgery in his knee in 2008. So if that's what he's talking about, that means that it's on that knee because either the thing that's holding the tendon together either fell off or got old, or something happened again that they had to refix the tendon. I believe it's the second thing, that the thing got old and they had to replace it, which is still a big deal. You still gotta basically reteach yourself how to walk, but it won't be as hard. It's just you gotta get back used to it. And also, Bruce Arians wishes more players would come to OTAs. And a quote from Arians, he said, they're fighting for jobs that they have no idea what they're fighting for. Now, it's quite of an onslaught of words. And I do agree, the NFLPA said that, well, we're not going to have them do all OTAs. You can if you want, but we're not going to want you to. The Cowboys, for instance, they said, well, instead of doing 10 OTAs, we'll do 8. but because we got a Hall of Fame game anyway, so it doesn't matter. But if you're the Bucks, like, Tom Brady not being there is a big deal, but you know he'll be ready. But if you had a team like the Packers, where Aaron is not going to show up for voluntary OTAs, not going to probably show up for mini camp, for mandatory camp, and if Aaron doesn't show up, Adams doesn't show up, and so and so and so and so. So it's very confusing. But if you had a team like the Bucks, you don't have to be worried about that because it's Tom Brady. You know he'll be ready. But if you're the Packers, so much of your work is in Aaron Rodgers. If he doesn't show up, there's a big problem. But what do you guys think? What do you think of the idea of the NFL pursuing an 18-game season after just getting a 17-game season? You decide.